So I guess it's up to David now to take us into the Beaver Valley and show us all the things we can do.
Just before you start, could I just say thank you for Marie and I for this,
Yes.
for this award. And we tried to say something sooner, but we were muted. So anyway, thank you very much. And we really appreciate that you did that.
Good. I'm glad you appreciate it. It's very well deserved. And we will get your certificate to you and some of your book and something from Kate as soon as we can. Same with you, John. And for our board members that are leaving, we will be giving the book to them too. So Brian Robin will be receiving Robert Alvo's book, and Gord Toth will be receiving that. And because I am so pleased with our 2 new board members coming on, and I know Marcia likes this book, so I'll be awarding, or the board will be awarding Marcia a book and also Sheila Gunby a book too. So now we can head to David.
Motion to adjourn.
No, we need a motion to adjourn. Sorry, I almost forgot. I'm getting ahead of myself.
I'll make that motion, Pam. Brendan.
Thank you, Brendan.
Brendan wins.
I saw ya. Okay, motion to adjourn.
There's no voting on a motion to adjourn. We're just done.
We're just done. Okay, that's fine with me. David, finally, you get to show us your lovely face.
Yeah, if my computer works. Oh, it does. So if my computer cuts out in the middle of this, I'm really sorry. I've been having a couple of problems today with weird things going on, but I think it's all working okay now.
Okay.
So I'm going to share my screen so you can see my photographs. So tonight's presentation is birding the different locations in the Beaver Valley and why. Well, of course, the reason why is the Beaver Valley is one of the most beautiful areas around anywhere in the world, as you can see right here. And I'm going to go into full screen so you can all see these lovely photographs. And I don't know why I can't move them on. Something strange seems to be happening. All right. Yeah, so I've got a few different, I'm going to go through 5 different locations in the valley. It was sitting all the different locations and the different kinds of habitats that occurred in the valley. The valley starts up at Hoggs Falls, well, Flesherton, just outside of Flesherton. For some reason, this isn't, something's not working here.
So someone
Brian,
has noted,
can you hear me?
Yeah, someone has noted they can't see the presentation. I'm also seeing just black. You could try dropping out of the screen share and turning it back on again.
Yeah, I'm actually, I myself, I'm stuck on one photograph here, and I can't get it to either drop out or, oh, hold on, something's happening now. Here we go. So for some reason, I can't seem to advance these pictures.
Can you try arrow key?
Yeah, just 1 second. Yeah, I had an arrow key on before. I think I'm going to switch to a different program and see if I can get it going that way, John. Brian, sorry.
Yep, no.
So I'm going to drop that out. Okay, so I can get it working like this. I'm sorry it's not completely full screen, but 9 species seen there so far. So, okay, apparently I've stopped screen sharing again. I'm back again. Okay, so the location itself is a bit of all. As you can see, this is what it looks like in the early spring, nice open grasslands. The lagoons themselves, there are 2. This is the one where most of the birding occurs. As you can see, it's quite well covered in flora and trees. And then as you walk around, there is also some bushy scrubland, very wet forest off to the one side. And this is the second lagoon, which is very open, which in the fall drops down and is home to a lot of shorebirds. So now we're going to start on the birds that you see here. This is a northern shoveler. Some of my photos you will see have the name of the bird in there. But so during the late fall and in the early spring, before they freeze up and then after they freeze up, is really good birding for ducks. And in the springtime, we get a lot of migrants coming through. The masked bandit, the common yellow-throated warbler. Wood ducks proliferate there. I've seen as many as 85 wood ducks at one time on the small lagoon. They breed in the area through the woods in the wet forests, in their cavities, and then they come out onto the lagoons. In the fall, the American widgeon is a very common resident until the water freezes over. And then in the springtime, we get some great migrants coming through. My very favorite sparrow is often seen there. This is the fox sparrow. And in the springtime, we get large flocks of cedar waxwings who come to eat on all the berries. Unfortunately, there is a lot of berries, but unfortunately, they are a lot of autumn olive, which is really taking over, which does provide a lot of food for the birds. In the wintertime, we get northern shrikes there. It's excellent hunting ground for northern shrikes. Over the last 5 years, there's been a lot of green herons, and this year we finally saw evidence that they were nesting there. I'd suspected it for many years, but we did see a green heron carrying some nesting material while we were out on a bit of a trip there, which was really nice. Also, more spring migrants coming through, pine warbler. A lot of yellow rump warblers, as you might expect, pass through the valley, through all areas of the valley, but particularly down by the lagoons because there's such a lot of food there. Palm warblers come through in large numbers too. As I said, sewage lagoons are excellent locations for birding because of the amount of biodiversity. There are a lot of insects there. And a lot of swamp sparrows, as you might expect, with a lot of swampy areas. The yellow warbler is a resident through most of the summer and breeds there. And this year, I finally got to see one sitting on a nest, which was a real treat. So she's hatching her young right now. And then one of the rarer visitors we've had there is the Cedrone. It's one of the few places in the valley that these have been spotted. And every 2 or 3 years, you can catch a Cedrone or two, although they've never stayed for the entire season. The hooded mergansers are breeding in the area right now, and this one has 2 chicks. I saw her just a couple of days ago swimming with these little babies. And the only place that I've ever spotted a least bitten was at the Sewage lagoons. I flushed one while looking for something else by accident, and I've never seen it again or even heard one there, but it was a real treat to see this one there. The American bittens, of course, have seen it quite a lot more frequently. Really, really lovely bird. We often see them flying over, and we got a really good view of some flying over this year with the small group that went down. In the wintertime this year, because of the eruption there that we had, of course, pine grosbeaks come down. This was the only male I spotted through the whole valley this year, and he just happened to be at the Sewage lagoons, which was a real treat. And very occasionally in the spring, we see the red-necked grebe come through. Sorry, it's not the best quality photograph. And one of the pretty much for sure places in the summertime you can find this beautiful bird. This is a black-billed cuckoo. There's been one for at least 6 years in residence down around the lagoons. Often calling, and every once in a while he'll pop up and show his face. And finally at the lagoons, I've been hearing these birds down there for years, and we finally actually got to see one this year. This is a soarer, and he was making a silent run around the edge while we happened to be standing there. Next, I'm going to go up to Lake Eugenia. So Lake Eugenia has become quite a birding hotspot. It boasts not only the lake, but a lot of small ponds around the edges, which are covered with these beautiful marshy areas. Excellent birding habitat. And then, of course, there is the causeway, where most people do their birding there. And as you can see on the causeway is the osprey nest. And for the 30 years that I've lived in the area, there has been an osprey nesting in this spot. And there is now another pair that nest further around, which has been really, really lovely. And here are our residents this year on the new box, which is just around near Turner's Hill. Nothing to do with me. So another winter resident, which is very common on the lake, is the bald eagle family. I know there's a pair that nests for sure down in the valley on the river, and there has to be some nest somewhere on the lake, but I've never been able to locate it. And as John was saying earlier, we get treated to tundra swans. Wintertime is the best time to bird the causeway because of the proliferation of ducks. There are ducks that stay there all winter. There's some open water all year long that are there. Here we see quite a few tundra swans and many of the other mixed ducks in the background too. Tundra swans, of course, are a great attraction to bring people in, feeding here, and there are mute swans that breed on the lake too. There are also, occasionally we do see trumpeter swans show up, although they no longer breed there. This is part of the large group that John was talking about that we saw this year. With the day that we were out with the field naturalist group, we saw 300 of them. I counted in one day over 400 this year, which was really good. You see large rafts of ring-billed ducks that stay as long as possible on the lake. And here are the tundra swans again flying over. Long-tailed ducks occasionally make an appearance. We see a few every year. They don't seem to stay very long, but it's always a real treat to see them. Buffleheads, of course, are a natural there, and they stay as long as there's open water. And it seems to be as soon as the water opens in the spring, they appear. Golden eyes, of course, are another duck that stays around for as long as possible. More ring-bills. We have good mergansers there. So we have the common merganser here. We get quite a good population of red-breasted mergansers and hooded mergansers, which breed in the area. And they are, of course, cavity nesters that breed around and then bring their young out onto the lake. And we do get a good amount of gadwells that hit that area. And of course, the ever popular mallard, although I've decided to rename this bird the Mallard because it sounds a little more exotic. One of the few places in the valley that you would actually see a loon. They do come through every spring, seems in very small numbers, although they don't seem to stay on the lake, unfortunately. Blue-winged teal like to come around into the shallows. And one of the pied-billed grebes, which do breed there, which is really nice to see every year. And horned grebe, it's one of the few places other than out on the in the bay. It's one of the few places you'll actually see the horned grebes. They'll occasionally stop by onto the lake. Sandhill cranes seem to be there all year. Down way to the south, in the southeast corner, there's often a pair that breed, or several pairs that breed down there. And in the early spring, you can see them wading through the shallows in the marshland. And then later on, we seem to get these nice inky plumage birds that show up too. And every once in a while, you might be treated to something special. This, of course, is Virginia rail. And I've heard them there many times. And last year, this guy came right out along the roadside where I was. Also a good place for gulls, and one of the few places in the area that you're liable to see Bonaparte's gull. This is a Bonaparte's gull here in its fall colors. And also one of the few places in the valley where you can pick up shorebirds. We are quite sparse in shorebirds, but these sanderlings occasionally drop in small numbers onto the lake. And one of the best known residents of the lake around the marshes, of course, is the swamp sparrow. Here fairly early in the year, showing his lovely plumage before it gets really, really warm. Now we're going to move up to the top end of the valley, up onto the rim. This is the Little Germany Conservation Area. Little Germany is also blessed with a few habitats. This is the nice wide open plain. I took this in the early spring before the grasses grow, so you can see. So right at the very back along here, there's open water, which attracts birds. And then this is the same area as it is right now. As you can see, things are starting to grow up and really green up. And then this is the other side. And then further down, we have a couple of different wooded areas. Down this stretch is a very, very wet woodland. So in here, there's lots and lots of water on the ground amongst the standing trees. And then down this end is more hardwood, which is really nice. And you can see a lot more hardwood here. This area attracts some very interesting birds. Because of the big open area and the water around, of course, we get Wilson snipe. And if you go there in the spring, you can listen to them displaying and doing their crazy flight in the air, which is always a wonderful treat to see. This is an older flycatcher, and on this day, when I was out with Lynn, we saw an older and a willow flycatcher. Of course, fortunately, they were both calling at the time, so we could tell them apart, which was really great. And one of the constant singers up in Little Germany is the white-throated sparrow, singing his beautiful, sweet Canada, Canada song. In the early and late part of the year, we get lots of golden-crested kinglets coming through. And winter wrens. This guy actually popped out. He's another one of those birds that do a lot of calling and not much viewing. House wrens, of course, seen up there. And out onto the water, greater yellowlegs. In the springtime, this is a really good place to see warblers coming through. A Cape May warbler. Black and white warblers are very common up there, which is really nice. Oven birds through the hardwood section, often hard to find, very hard to focus on, as they don't seem to stay up very long, doing his teacher call and then dropping down. Blue-headed vireo move through there in the spring. Northern parula. Magnolia warbler. Indigo buntings, always a treat. The black-throated green warbler, which is another quite common bird up there. And my very favorite warbler of all, the Canada warbler, which last year was there for at least 5 weeks. I heard him singing for at least 5 weeks. I've been up this year and he unfortunately has not returned that I can find so far. So now we're going to move down into the central part of the valley. And the central part of the valley is dominated, of course, by the river that runs through the center, but also a lot of open fields and farmlands. which really can bring in a completely different set of birds, which is really nice. And then running right through the center of the valley, of course, is the Beaver River, which is heavily wooded on both sides. And then along the open parts of the river, you see often these scrubby parts. Oops, slow one. So during the winter months, of course, in those woods, a great place to see a brown creeper. And then back out onto the grasslands, these guys move in really early. This is eastern meadowlark calling away. And you can see them right from the end of March all the way through the year singing. And the bluebirds, one of the great places to see bluebirds in this area is through the Beaver Valley. Savannah sparrows, of course, like that open field land. Field sparrows, naturally. And in the spring and fall, we see the white-crowned sparrow moving through in fairly large numbers. And every once in a while, we get this little guy through, which is a grasshopper sparrow. They don't seem, for some reason, to stay in the same area. This year, they've moved up onto the top of the valley near Duncan, and I haven't located one yet down in the open grasslands. And very rarely, but occasionally, the clay-colored sparrow moves into the valley. Last year, there were several up, but away from the center part. And then 2 years ago, these guys were down in the center part of the valley. And also in the springtime, you see Tennessee warblers coming through. This one is feeding on nectar in the spring before there are many insects. And occasionally in the open parts of the valley, you might see one of these guys, the yellow-billed cuckoo. He's much rarer through the valley than the black-billed cuckoo, but every once in a while we get a couple come through. And of course, because of the open grassland, we get bobolinks. And fortunately, a lot of the farmers are now delayed the harvesting. So the bobolinks are starting to make a comeback in the valley, which is really nice to see. And this year I've seen greater numbers than I've seen in the past 30 years of living here. And of course, one of our residents that's always in the valley are large numbers of turkey vultures. And you can see them circling over the valley all through the summer and spring. And of course, along the road there, which is quite busy because there was a lot of roadkill. So you often see them sitting on fence posts around the road. Brown thrashers like to move through there and breeding. And one of the other shorebirds that stays around for a while, the killdeer, of course, which is down in the valley in fairly large numbers. The Palliated Woodpecker is one of our showier members. And every once in a while, if you're lucky, you'll get to see this guy. This is a red-headed woodpecker who are few and far between in the valley. And I must say, this made my decade when I got to see this guy. And driving along the side of the road, you might just see one of these guys out. He was doing his, of course, famous walk across the road, and then he was chased away by a blue jay before I could get any more shots. But they do come in fairly large numbers in the spring into those open, sort of bushy, scrubby, wet grounds where you can see them doing their displays. And we were very happy to see this guy back for a second year, but moved over a couple of kilometers for his original one. This is a golden wing warbler, which is, they were several living in the center part of the valley and calling earlier in the year, and I'm not sure if they're still there. Last year, they were about 2 kilometers away, over closer to the Kimberley Sewage Lagoons. So the last place I want to talk about is Side Road 19 river putting. So that's where you can put in your boats into the river there. And we have an eastern towhee here, luckily. Oh, I'm actually still in the valley. I'm jumping ahead of myself. I'm very sorry. So I'm still in the center part of the valley. I obviously wrote my notes down wrong. So a northern harrier, here you can see him in the early springtime, where he was hunting through those nice open fields. And this year, finally in the valley, got to see this guy. Had not seen one in the valley before this year in the entire 30 years I'd lived here. But several of them, thanks Nigel for pointing this out to me, where he was. I went and found him here sitting close to the road than he originally was. And also in the wintertime down in the valley, we get, this year we've had fairly large numbers of evening grosbeaks that came down during the eruption. And because of the open grasslands, in the springtime, we get fairly large numbers of horned larks. Best time to see the horned lark, of course, is just after snow or something like that, where they are feeding along the open roadsides. And also down in the valley this year, we were treated to very large numbers of Bohemian Wax Wings. And I have to say this year, up until a month ago, I had not seen a cedar waxwing in the valley, but I'd seen several hundred Bohemian waxwings, which was a real treat. And in some of those flooded fields in the spring, you'll see waterfowl coming in and water birds coming in. This is northern pintail, which when the fields are flooded, surprisingly enough, you'll see in fairly large numbers. This year, of course, there were no ducks in the valley at all, except on the river because of the extreme dry conditions. So now we'll get to the river access 19, and I apologize for my mistake there. So side road 19 river access boasts, of course, a lot of water. This is the Beaver River, and this area is where a lot of kayakers and canoers put in. But it's also very heavily forested. And the woods get very wet through here. So it provides excellent habitat for quite a diverse number of birds. And as you can see, the woods start to dry out a little around now. At this time of year, they're starting to dry out quite seriously. But because it's wet through there, we get some really nice birds. This is a very small roadway that leads off out of that area, which is wet woodlands on either side, and then moves into dry hardwood further along, providing great habitat for warblers and other birds. And of course, because we have the rivers and the shallows there, we tend to get quite a few blue herons and quite a few great egrets all along the river. And large numbers of ruby crown kinglets move through in the fall and in the springtime, which is really nice to see. And of course, our beautiful chickadee, which is there singing his little heart out all year long, and one of the birds that we can always pretty much be guaranteed to see all the way through the valley the entire year, bringing lots of joy to me and many other people. Of course, because the water is there, we get hooded mergansers and other waterfowl. Also in the spring, it's home to large numbers of yellow-bellied sapsuckers who really drum more prolifically, it seems, than anywhere else in the valley through the spring season. Palm warblers come in, of course, and their migration. Pine warblers. This is a hermit thrush, which is a fairly frequent visitor through the area. And a really excellent place to see the northern water thrush. Breeding on territory for sure there. Every year, pretty much guaranteed to see several around. And these guys are really not shy. And this year they've been quite close to the road, which has been really good. Warbling vireos, of course, with that beautiful long song. Gray catbirds. Feasting on, as you can see, quite a proliferation of insects. A eastern wood pewee, great crested flycatcher, least flycatcher, all fairly common through there through the summertime, all calling and often down where in exposed places where you can see them, which is really great. And every once in a while, you can hop on a treat. This year, there was a small group of us out and we heard a huge commotion and took off to see a massive amount of crows chasing an owl away. And then about a week and a half later, I just happened to see this guy, which was a real treat. This, of course, is a great horned owl. Blackburnian warblers are one of the warblers that move through this area down through those hardwoods along the water area. Quite a number of rose-breasted grosbeaks. And my very favorite bird of all time is one of the places that you can find them in the spring. They don't seem to hang around through there. There are oak trees which bring this in. The Scarlet Tanager. So the Scarlet Tanager is the bird, my trigger bird. He's the bird that got me back into birding. I used to be a birder a long time ago, and I started traveling and got slightly into birding again. And then there he was, the golden, as I like to call him, the black-winged redbird, the Scarlet Tanager, just a most beautiful bird. That concludes the presentation. I didn't want to stretch this out too long because I know it's been a fairly long night for everybody. If anybody has any questions about locations or birds, we can certainly open that up.
So there is a question in the chat. Where are the lagoons? I can think a more precise location of those.
So the Kimberley Sewage Lagoons is the name that is given to them by eBird as a hotspot. If you come out, if you're heading south from Kimberley and you take the left-hand turn, which is 7 heading towards Meaford, drive along there, go past Talisman, and then you turn the first left past Talisman, which is Langtree Road. Just take a left there, drive down a couple of 100 meters, and you can park at the side of the road. And then there are quite an expansive area, the 2 lagoons, one on the right, one on the left, providing all kinds of different habitat. And any time of the year, if you can go there any time of the year to see birds, it really is a fabulous hotspot.
So Dean is asking if you could describe the public access point on Eugenia Lake.
So there's not a huge amount of public access on Eugenia Lake. The most common place to bird on Eugenia Lake is, of course, the causeway through the late fall, early winter, and then the late winter, early spring. But please be prepared to dress warmly if you go out there. The wind can howl across there and feels like it's peeling your face off. There was Tammy and Nigel and I went out to see the Tundra Swans this year, and snow was blowing horizontally across there. A couple of the other spots you can go is just slightly west of the causeway is a dead-end road. I don't remember the actual name of it, but if you turn left up there, there's a really nice marshland that goes all the way along to the end before you come to some houses. And there's a pond, a small pond on either side, and you can walk all through there. And then, of course, if you go across the causeway heading east, and then turn left on side road 35, and head up there, head up Turner's Hill, and when you drop down Turner's Hill on the other side, you come to a very large expanse of marshland, and that's an open area you can go. Another open area you can go to is if you go into the town of Eugenia itself, to the boat launch access, and then you can walk across the dam and around there. But the best birding there is definitely off the causeway for ducks and geese. And one of the few places actually you can see snow geese. I didn't include a photo of snow. Like I said, I couldn't even include photos of the amount of birds I've seen. I've seen like close to 150 species on Lake Eugenia myself, and in the valley itself, I've seen like 220 species of birds. So there are lots of birds around.
So I suppose I have a question, although I guess it's more of an observation. Your yellow warbler nest,
Yes.
The photo of that, it looked like there was a tent caterpillar nest in the same photo.
Right next to it. That's how actually I found the yellow warbler nest. Was I always keep a close eye on tent caterpillars in the hopes that I'll see a black-billed cuckoo coming in. And I couldn't help but notice that there was a yellow warbler female not leaving, sitting on there. And so I put my binoculars on and panned down and found the nest there, yeah. So you are correct, Brian. It was
So
that's
another use for a tent caterpillar.
Another
I've seen yellow warblers raiding the nests of tent caterpillars and flying away with the silk. I assume for nest building.
yeah.
So to me, that's kind of like building a house right next to a lumber yard.
Yeah,
Where her nest was.
it'd be interesting to see what happens when those tent calipers are really big and not hanging out in that tent anymore, because they will defoliate that shrub completely, and that nest will be completely exposed of the yellow warbler.
The tent caterpillars around me are fully grown and off pupating, so that might be past.
Okay, well, yeah, these guys. I was there a couple of days ago, and these guys are still there because I was so excited to see this little nest there that, you know, I've been going back and checking on her from a distance to see how she's doing, and she's sitting tight. I did get a chance to get relatively close to the nest a little while ago, and there were 3 eggs in there.
Oh, fantastic. There is a question from Elizabeth Barningham. How many species did you show tonight?
How many species I showed tonight? I showed around 130 species. And I tried to go fairly quickly. And for anybody who knows me, I can ramble on quite a bit. And I know that I didn't want to keep everybody too late because I'm rather passionate about nature and especially about birding. So I tried to keep the numbers down so I hopefully didn't bore anybody, and move through them at a speed that hopefully wasn't too boring. Anything else, anybody? I have to say, one of the great things, of course, a lot of those species of birds that I presented there, you can find in several of those locations. And of course, there are, like I said, quite a lot more species of birds in there. But the different locales, of course, I didn't cover at all the lake, the main lake, the big lake, like Georgian Bay. I didn't go in there. Down there because, like I said, there were so many locations and so many different kinds of habitats through the valley. I think I could probably do an hour presentation, 1 a month for the next year, with all the things that you can see and find through the valley. So at most times of the year, it's really worth a walk through, and you'll never be disappointed, even if there are not a lot of birds, because there's so many other beautiful things there. There's all those beautiful vistas and views of the valley. It's full of incredible plants. I'm a gardener by profession and a plant guy even more than a bird guy. So for me, it's absolute heaven to go birding through the valley, and always willing to go out with people too. If anybody is in a mood to go out, there's a few of us who often hop off on a little tour, and now things are opening up. More people can come, and I can share the valley with people.
I don't see any more questions coming in. Several people complimenting your wonderful photography, and I'll say myself, I'm glad that you had a plan B as far as displaying the photos. I know myself that it's a little bit harder providing tech support over Zoom. So in person, I know I start to panic when I hit plan K. So I'm glad that you had at least one backup in there.
Well, I did, and I have to thank you, Brian, for showing. As I said, I'm a Luddite with technology, and it was really great that you showed me how easy this actually was to do. So I must admit, I was a little bit nervous, which is probably why I rushed through the presentation probably more than I normally would have. And thank you all.
But you did wonderful on that night, and
thank
beautiful
you,
photos.
And thank you all so much for allowing me to share one of my passions of the Beaver Valley with you all. And like I said, you know, I'm not hard to find if anybody wants to go out.
Well, I certainly have to say that I enjoyed the spring walk with you to no end. I definitely have to get out because I'm in Bognor. I can go either north or south, and certainly I need to pay more attention to the Beaver Valley and a little more attention to my own woods for that matter.
Absolutely. Bognor is one of the best areas around. It's a super birding area.
Yeah, I actually had a red-eyed vireo hit my umbrella over my patio table and sit on the table with me. So that was pretty cool. But thank you so much. Wonderful presentation. I'm so jealous of your photography skills, and you have so much to do. It's just, it's incredible how many birds that you've seen and how many of the little ghost birds that I call them, the ones that are my nemesis that I don't see very much, like a Virginia rail for one of them.
It takes a phenomenal amount of patience to see a bird like that. And sometimes, you know, you just got to sit there. I get some of my friends always saying, well, how do you see so many birds? Well, sometimes you actually don't see many, but you just get that really great view of that one bird, which is really fabulous. You just sit there and there for a while and come to. And I have to say, in terms of photography, I actually use a point and shoot camera. It has a pretty nice zoom on it, but it's just a point and shoot camera because primarily I'm a birder, not a bird photographer. And I started taking the photographs for my own records, and then I started posting them on Facebook so my friends could see them. And then it sort of took off from there a bit.
Yeah, well, good for you. So on behalf of the field naturalists, I thank you so, so much for doing this presentation. I enjoyed it thoroughly, but I am a birder. So the whole thing is that with birding, you get to see everything though. You get to see all the plants, all the trees. You see the mesh work of nature making things work together. You see everything. So whether you're a birder or whether you're into plants or anything else, it's well worth doing any of the hikes and things like that, because there's always somebody that has a little bit of expertise and a little bit of things. But your hike in the spring was awesome for me. It was terrific. And when I did my thing on Africa, I bought a brand new iPhone. Everything that I took was shot with an iPhone, for heaven's sake.
Right. Yeah.
So it was amazing. But thank you so, so much. We're really looking forward to seeing you come back to us and do a few more hikes. And I know I'll be one of them.
Thanks very much. I mean, birders, like you said, there's so much to see. In the summertime, when there's not so much birding activity, we all become plant and butterfly people. Because
Right.
you see as much of that as you do birds. And thank you very much for letting me share my passion with you all. It was a real treat.
Well, we thank you very much. And on behalf of the Owen Sound Field Naturalists, if you would, we do like to give our book out, the Robert Alvo book. And if you would care to have a copy, I would be more than happy to bring it over to the Beaver Valley and deliver it.
Oh, that'd be lovely. Maybe we can go out birding, pal.
Okay.